Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and sensitivity to transits. And the thing about this is what we have to understand is that nobody really is immune to transits. Yes, I mean, even people that have like a very like intractable or immutable, very fixed chart, they could resist certain transits to some degree, but thing about it is, even in that, it sometimes it can be difficult, excuse me, to resist them completely. Now, the thing about this is, we can have people that are on a very regimented type of routine, and they do the same thing every day. Somebody that has a very fixed dominant chart. I have a fairly strong fixed element in my chart. I don't have much deviation in what I do on a day-to-day basis. Things with me are very regimented, really in timed in a lot of instances. And I mean, I eat the same time every day practically, and go to bed around the same time every night. So there's really not much deviation. But the thing about it is, there are certain things that could still happen as a result of transits that sometimes can be unavoidable. But when you look at certain things, like take for example, you have somebody that has a very again a dominant fixed chart, a person that generally doesn't deviate day to day what they're doing. Let's take an example. Let's say they have Neptune transiting their eighth house in their chart. Now, this person might be so strong and averse to change. For example, they may not be ready to make any, like this. I mean, Neptune transiting the eighth can sometimes be indicative of a spiritual transformation, or doing something, or it could be or metaphysical transformation, which may include astrology, or it could simply be where one person may get involved in something Neptune related that's in a shared resources situation. It could be a business connection, such as something with poetry or dancing, the metaphysical, which includes astrology, photography, chemistry. It can be something Neptune related, but the thing about it is, if you're a person that's resistant to change, that actually may not impact you in that manner, but it doesn't mean that you wouldn't be more susceptible to, say, credit card fraud or something that you have circumstances where it might be out of your hands in some cases, that things might impact you, even if you're living a fairly sedentary, very stable existence where you're not really doing a whole lot, even if you're a person that's homebound. I'm going to get to that momentarily, but and you're really not doing much differently on a day-to-day basis. Or another example would be, like, say you have that transit Neptune in the eighth house. You could be somebody where, if you're in a sexual relationship, that the person might be overly become, well, so you might see the person becoming more deceptive and duplicitous, or succumb to drugs and alcohol, especially if there's something in their chart that's indicating a propensity for it, whether it may be through natal or transits or progression. So anyway, or another example would be, again, going back to the very fixed personality that, which really might not really be so much a person that may not be about much change or deviation on a day-to-day basis. Let's say that person has Pluto transiting their sixth house. Now, this might not be a person, like if this is a person that has a stable job, is not really much about deviating. It's somebody that does wants to continue what they're doing day to day. They might not have a major transformation in terms of their work life, or it may not be somebody that's starting maybe a position that could be Pluto related, such as something like with surgery, or something with astrology, the occult, supernatural, the occult, recycling, anything that could be connected with transformation. But it could be somebody that might be going through upheavals at their place of employment. It might be somebody that might be dealing with very destructive health-related issues, or a health-related issue that could be Pluto related, such as something with the colon, the bladder, the reproductive system. These are things sometimes that can happen, that can be unavoidable. The thing about this too, another thing that I wanted to, and especially say if that's in conjunct the ascendant at the time, because in conjuncts can be about health related issues. And the thing about this too, let's take another example. Let's say we're talking about people that are in a very introverted chart, which is similar to the fixed chart, except that this is just more about people that just aren't overly gregarious, people that are very introverted, introspective, that live basically a lot of it, their experience that they're living inside themselves a lot. I have a very introverted and introspective chart. For example, I have 8 of my 10 planets are below the horizon. One of the planets that are in the top half of the chart is Saturn in the 12th house, and that of course could be very reclusive and very introverted and introspective. Placement Saturn in the 12th house may have difficulty allowing others to enter their lives. Now, if a person is somebody that's very isolated, they may not experience many new things or events. Transits may have a little bit less effect on them, as in contrast to somebody that's very action oriented, has a lot of activity going on in their life, a more gregarious person. But it doesn't mean they won't be impacted in it on them by them in some way, shape, or form. As an example, let's say we take transit. Transit Neptune is making an adverse aspect to one's natal Mars, Sun, or Ascendant. Now, the thing about this could be a time where a person might be more inclined toward daydreaming and fantasizing as opposed to actually doing things. There might be some dissipation in the energy level and vitality. If this person is dominated by more introverted things, doing things at home, it could be working out in their basement or something, but at the same time, you might still, as this example goes, you still might have some energy level that might be that might be impacted at this time. Like say take transit Mars in the 12th house could be another example of of a period where your energy may be more depleted than it usually is. Now let's take another example. Let's say we take a transit, like say Pluto or Uranus in your 4th house. Now, I mean, transit Pluto is in your 4th house. I mean, and you're a person that's not really much about change or deviation. You may not be somebody that's going to go out and try to transform your home or renovate it or remodel it. But what might happen is you might still be subject to some kind of upheavals in the home front, and if you have transit Uranus in the 4th house, there could be some instability that's going on in your home life that you find where, okay, I'm living one place one moment, 3 months later, somebody says they couldn't pay the mortgage on the house. Say you're renting a room out. Oh, sorry, we couldn't get the mortgage taken care of. You're going to have to move. Things can be out of your control. Now, transit Uranus in the 4th house for some other people that are more activity oriented, might be somebody that might be starting to do like Uranus things, say out of the home, or maybe something that with a person they feel close to home with. It could be a person that might start to do something with electronics or computers or astrology out of the home, as an example. Those or a person that decides to wire their home with very state-of-the-art electronic, maybe like electronic alarm devices or what have you, computerized systems, something that's very innovative. That's like an alarm system for your home. Now, that is. But a lot of the way these transits can impact people can be predicated on how they're actually living. If it's a person that's more activity oriented, or if it's a person that's more sedentary, more stable, more set in what they're doing day to day. Now, let's take somebody that has a more extroverted and gregarious chart. You take somebody that has a preponderance of their planets on the top half of the chart, and let's say they, in addition to that, if that person has the majority of their major astrological influences in masculine signs. This could be somebody, of course, that's very outgoing, very gregarious, and they might experience the transits in manifold ways. They could experience in their outer world a lot, but even extroverted people have to go home at some time, go to sleep, and do certain things around the home. They could be impacted in ways that are more in the outer world and the inner world as well. I mean, you take an example. Let's say we take transit Mars in Aquarius hits somebody's 12th house, and this person is somebody that's obvious, that's very extroverted, very gregarious. It could be a person where in some cases it could manifest in altruistic actions for those that are less fortunate than themselves, such as the oppressed, the homeless, the hungry, the impoverished, and also too, but another way it could manifest, it could be about private battles with friends. So and it could, and these are ways where, I mean, it just depends a lot on your own chart, how your chart is set up and what kind of person you are. If you're a person that, again, is very stable or fixed in your nature, if you're somebody that's not about deviation from day to day. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now, I want to take one more example. Let's take somebody that's got an action-oriented chart. Well, let's say, for example, I mean, it's somebody that has a cardinal dominant chart. It's somebody that has a preponderance of their major astrological influences in the cardinal signs. The cardinal signs, of course, are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. This could be a person that might really what it is when you have more action in your nature. It equates, often manifests in more experiences, and when you're involved in more experiences, the transits can obviously be affecting you in many different ways. I mean, somebody that's got some transit Pluto in their 10th house, they might be. This could be the kind of person that might actually be going through some transformation in their career. It could be a person that might start a career that could be Pluto related. It could be something with recycling or something with occult, astrology, supernatural, a death profession like working as a coroner or a mortician. And it could also be about dealing with things like, say, with a dominant parent. It could be dealing with maybe ruthless behavior with a dominant parent, or some power struggles with one. And even though that we're talking about the 10th house, the battles with you're in a power struggle with the dominant parent, which is often the father. That's often something that you may not talk about with others. That could be actually taking place in the home. So those are, I mean, you're dealing with it. And again, a lot of this does have to do, I believe, with how your chart is set up. And the thing about it is, and even people, it's interesting when you're talking about people that they don't believe in astrology, they rebuke it or what have you, and they don't even think about it. Those people, it's funny because those people obviously can still be impacted by it, and progressions, of course, as well. You had, if I'm not mistaken, I remember when Carl Sagan, he had debunked astrology in some video he had, but it was interesting because when he died, he had, if I'm not mistaken, in his progressed chart, he had Pluto conjunct his ascendant. And he did die at that time. And remember, Pluto can be connected. In his progressed chart, Pluto was conjunct the ascendant, is what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is that Pluto, of course, can be associated with death, and the ascendant is about our vitality in the physical body. So when you have a transit like that, there can be a greater, transit, in this case progression. When you have a transit or progression like that, there can be a greater propensity or proclivity for death, sadly. And if he had known more about the astrology, he might have had a little more insight or inclination as to this, that this was a time where he was in a danger zone as far as that goes. But anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.